Hey everyone, a lot's happened since I've been gone, huh? Did you guys hear that they made a virus, but it's the freaking beer Corona? And cops are bad now? Okay. Look, here's the deal. These videos take a long time to make, not because they're good, but because I'm really stupid. And since everything's happening so fast now, I can't really make good jokes about current events. Like, can you believe this thing happened, which I totally had time to write into the script? That was crazy. So instead of focusing on the present, I want to take you back to a time before beer virus. Close your eyes. Close your mouth. Shh. Stop breathing for a second and listen. Now think back to February of this year, that one good week when everything was okay. Bernie was gonna be the nominee, you could go outside without wearing a mask, SNL was still on TV, I couldn't think of a third one. Now remember the pain you felt a few weeks later when you knew, deep down, Joe Biden was gonna be the nominee. Unless you're a centrist, in which case, just remember how it felt when your maids tried to unionize. In 3 weeks, we went from Bernie winning Nevada to being in lockdown with Joe, Jim, Biden, Carrie as the prospective nominee. But in all the chaos, I feel like we never really got to review how it all went down. So let's do that. Hey, remember Iowa? That day was crazy! Almost as crazy as literally every other day in 2020. But there's a reason why Iowa sucked so much, and that man's name is Bernie Sanders. In 2018, the DNC changed some of their rules because of prompting from the Sanders campaign. They forced the Iowa Democrats to do such scandalous things like sharing vote totals with the public. This meant that any discrepancies would be very closely scrutinized because now we knew they existed. And even if the DNC didn't have to share vote totals, the caucus system itself is incredibly outdated. People had to stand in a room together. Remember doing that? Remember standing in a room with people? Publicly announcing their vote and attempting to pull others onto their side. This meant that the poll workers had to do literal head counts, which, as I'm sure you can guess, isn't the most accurate vote counting method. At least my 3rd grade teacher made us put our heads down before we raised our hands. Wow, thanks for that. Wow, oh my gosh, so much good feedback on this one. A viral video circulated on Twitter of a caucus worker rigging a coin flip to determine who won his precinct. Even before the results started coming in, anyone watching could see that the system was very broken. And I was watching. On caucus night, I was in my dorm room straight vibing, listening to tunes on my musical device and waiting for the results to roll on in. And they did, for a little while. Until they didn't anymore. Any numbers that had been released to the media were ruled inaccurate and quickly scrubbed. By midnight, there still weren't any results. But while the Iowa Democratic Party sat on their asses, literally refusing to answer phone calls, I was busy getting banned from the Chapo Trap House Discord server for posting a picture of Kylo Ren and Finn Star Wars having sex. Who's more presidential now? Speaking of Chapo, Twitter was ablaze with all sorts of quandaries, theories, even questions. I was in full conspiracy mode. Could they be trying to rig the results? Are they holding back because Bernie won? I mean, we'll never know for sure if the craziness that night was deliberate, but we do know there was a ton of shady shit going on. First, there was the Shadow app, which the Iowa Democrats used to collect the results from all the precincts. And I know people made this joke back when this was a thing, but like, calling your shady vote counting app Shadow? Are you serious, you Dr. Doofenshmirtz James Bond villain looking ass? Anyway, it turns out that the app the Democrats spent a fuck ton of money on didn't work. It broke, like, immediately. Turns out you need servers to run app? Not only was Shadow built by the dumbest software developers ever, but it was built by the dumbest DNC Insider software developers ever. The company that made Shadow, called Acronym, which isn't even an acronym but whatever, was founded by 2 people who worked on Hillary's 2016 campaign. One of the co-founders, Tara McGowan, was married to a Pete Buttigieg strategist literally working for his campaign. So the Democrats hired an organization founded by Hillary supporters, one of whom is the spouse of a Buttigieg strategist, to produce its main vote-counting app for the primaries. I wonder if they'll give Bernie a fair shake. Also, Pete's campaign paid Acronym $42,000 back in 2019, but I'll gracefully give him the benefit of the doubt for this one, because apparently he only paid them to create a text messaging service for him. Pete, I expect a letter proclaiming your gratitude to me, a YouTuber with 300 subscribers, in the mail by Monday. Still, I think this whole debacle shows just how connected the centrist campaigns were to the party apparatus. Even the supposedly neutral vote tabulation software was funded by party insiders who despise Bernie. This sort of super subtle... Callie? Please stop running around on my bed. This sort of super subtle, super secret bias against the left only increased in the coming weeks. Before the night ended, all of the candidates started milking the situation like a prized carton of milk. Before anyone else, Pete came out on stage and declared victory, regardless of the fact that literally none of the results were in. In response, Bernie also declared victory, releasing tallies his campaign took, showing that he had a clear lead in the popular vote. By the morning, every candidate had said something like, "Hey everyone, crazy stuff, at least we won, don't ask for proof I'm dying!" So by the next day, Democrats are freaking out. Everyone's asking where the results are, and Troy Price, the chairman of the IDP, isn't giving a clear answer.
The bottom line is that we hit a stumbling block on the back end of the reporting of the data. But the one thing I want you to know, we know this data is accurate. And we also have a paper trail and documentation that have been able to use to provide information to help verify the results. Anyways, thank you all, folks. The results are coming in. We will see you later.
To make matters worse, DNC Chair Tom Perez apparently also didn't know what was going on and called for a recanvass in the entire state. The IDP shot back saying, and I quote, "No, you little bitch, you piece of shit little bitch." And folks, that's a parody. Callie, stop it. By the end of the night, the Iowa Democrats had officially released some of the results and slowly leaked the rest over the next 2 weeks. And oh, look at that. All the precincts in the first batch coincidentally happened to be Peter Pan's best performing areas. And since the partial results showed him having a significant lead in the state, Bernie was probably toast, right? But he wasn't. After all the results came back, Bernie led the popular vote and was literally 0.04% behind Pete in the delegate count. You could call me a conspiracy theorist for calling this result into question, but considering the rest of the shit the Iowa Democrats pulled, I don't think Pete Buttigieg legitimately won Iowa. And even with all the bullshit that went on behind the scenes, it didn't really help the establishment in any way. The ideal would have been for Biden to get this huge victory, enough so that the party could say, hey, look at our lovely, slowly disintegrating nominee, look at how stable and normal he looks. That didn't happen though, and Pete's performance meant that insiders were now divided on who to support. I wonder who they'll pick. Okay, so, is that a ski resort next to a Dunkin' Donuts and a framed photograph of TV personality Seth Meyers? Oh, it's New Hampshire! New Hampshire was fine. Not really that important. Then again, when is it ever? Bernie won, but not by much. Guess that Klobuchar charm was just irresistible.
You guys are just straight up laughing tonight.
At this point, I was pretty worried for my biological father, Bernard Sanders, proved by DNA test, and the media seemed to agree. This image circulated after New Hampshire, showing Bernie losing when compared to a then non-existent amalgamation of centrist candidates. And in a weird way, this screenshot served as a warning to the Democratic establishment, because it told them that if they didn't get their shit together to pick a single candidate, Scary Bernie could win it all! Woo! But Biden's performance made it pretty hard for them to do that. After coming in 4th in Iowa and 5th in New Hampshire, plenty of people thought he was finished. And you know what? I'm gonna say it. Joe Biden is finished. There's no possible way that Joseph Robinette Biden could become the 2020 Democratic nominee. And knowing that objective truth about the universe, the Democrats opened up their secret box and called the emergency phone number. 2 minutes later, Michael Bloomberg emerged from his vat of slime and slinked his schlambling corpse to the debate stage. Wow, great joke delivery. 2 minutes later, Michael Bloomberg emerged from his vat of slime and slinked his shambling corpse to the debate stage.
I've been proud to stand with the Republican community in the fight for President Trump. As mayor, I helped lead the effort to pass stop and frisk through a Republican legislature. And I was honored to officiate the very first
Jeffrey Epstein sex trafficking
in New York State.
But oopsie daisy. Turns out being rich as hell doesn't automatically give you a personality. Old Mikey got up on that stage and talked for hours about how all the women he assaulted were actually totally fine with it. Maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but regardless, his abysmal debate performance sent him tumbling down the polls.
Where's my ice cream? Ah, thank you. Big gay ice cream is the best.
Nevada. Although polls showed Bernie in first, after how close New Hampshire had been, anything could have happened. And anything did. Bernie won in a landslide, giving me just the slightest bit of hope for the future. Remember having hope? Nevada was fun, though. You could see the Democrats sweating through their little britches because they knew Bernie had the momentum.
If you want to vote for Bernie Sanders because you feel good about his program, because you don't like the banks on Wall Street or you don't like pharmaceuticals, that's completely legitimate. I understand that. If you're voting for him because you think he'll win the election because he'll galvanize heretofore sleeping parts of the electorate, then politically you're a fool.
The reason I thought Sanders had a good shot was because I didn't really think the Democrats would get their shit together in time. Like, looking at Iowa, my view of the DNC was that they were more stupid than malicious. Sure, they were desperately trying to unite around a candidate, but they couldn't find someone without some major flaw, so they picked Joe Biden, a candidate whose flaws are so septic and festering that you're morbidly drawn to the putrefaction. I think if the Democrats had dropped all pretense of democracy and just picked who they wanted to be their nominee, they wouldn't have nominated Joe Biden. Instead, they would have picked me, the maker of this video and steadfast Democratic voter. But after Biden won South Carolina with a little finagling from Jim Clyburn, I think the party realized it was their only option. Either they made Biden their nominee, or Bernie was going to slip past a divided establishment. The media. Everybody loves him. Those guys up in CNN, NBC, PRC, USSR are always looking out for us. And that's why, when it looked like Bernie had a chance of winning, they urged the Democratic Party to put a stop to it. For our sake. Let's check in with journalist Jonathan Chait. Chait? I don't care. Known for his lovely takes such as, the Iraq War is good, actually, and a Trump presidency would be great for centrists, so we should support him. I'm sure this man will make good comments that are nice. Running Bernie Sanders against Trump would be an act of insanity. Sanders has gleefully discarded the party's conventional wisdom that it has to pick and choose where to push public opinion leftward, adopting a comprehensive left-wing agenda, some of which is popular and some of which is decidedly not. Positions in the latter category include replacing all private healthcare with a government plan, banning fracking, letting prisoners vote, decriminalizing the border, giving free healthcare to undocumented immigrants, and eliminating ICE. Dude, I'm gonna fucking throw up. Giving healthcare to immigrants? Let's see what he had to say a month later. Joe Biden is now the only Democrat who could stop Bernie Sanders. I remain as convinced as ever a Sanders nomination is an enormous risk, at a time when the Democratic Party can least afford to take one. The party's mainstream wing has been unable to get out of its own way, as an oversized field has split the center-left and allowed Sanders to coast on the strength of consolidating its smaller left wing. That problem now has only one plausible resolution: Joe Biden. Looking back on the week before Super Tuesday, it's super clear how transparent the Democrats were in their bid to stop Sanders, and I don't even think anyone disagrees with me there. I feel like even liberals would just say, well, it's not supposed to be democratic, it's good that the party intervened. The day before Super Tuesday, Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar both dropped out, endorsing Biden later that day. And at least on Twitter, I was very excited about this. I didn't like either of those candidates, so them dropping out was a good thing, right? I mean, it's not like I thought Bernie really could have won under any circumstance, including a world where Pete and Amy stayed in the race, but their dropping out insinuated that there was shit going on behind the scenes. There was some evidence of Obama pulling strings, but even if there wasn't, Pete and Amy knew they had no future in the Democratic Party if they didn't support the candidate the establishment wanted. Bernie had no such influence. All he had were his progressive policies. If another candidate running as a progressive truly cared about those policies, surely they would have dropped out and supported the only person with a chance, especially when the other side was doing that exact same thing, right? But Elizabeth Warren didn't drop out, not until long after Super Tuesday had come. Bernie lost pretty badly on Super Tuesday, with Joe Biden becoming the big winner. Biden went up on that wonderful Philadelphia stage and said the words that shook the nation. I'm Joe Biden, and I'm racist. Parody wording, guys, it's a parody. The thesis of this video isn't really about Bernie's campaign and where they went wrong, because I don't think how he organized his campaign mattered in the end. I think there were a fuck ton of things he did wrong. He should have gone way more on the offensive and tried to combat this false notion that he wasn't electable, whatever that means. But it ultimately didn't matter how well his campaign did or how well he spoke, because primaries just aren't a democratic system. The Democrats manufactured Biden's big Super Tuesday win, then the lovely media talked ad nauseum about how Bernie was now hitting his inevitable downfall. NPR talked about how Russia wants Bernie to win. The Chicago Tribune published an article called Why Joe Biden Won and Why Bernie Sanders Should Quit. Politico talked about how Democrats in the House were overjoyed by Biden's big win because it would help them win in November. The media wrote his obituary the day after Super Tuesday, even though 2/3 of the country still had to vote. Think about what would have happened if the situation had been reversed, and Biden lost by a surprising margin. The articles wouldn't be talking about how the party needs to unite around Bernie now. They'd be talking about how they should be doing more to stop him. But that's just my opinion, Kermit sipping on tea gif. Long after the damage was done, Elizabeth Warren finally, mercifully dropped out of the race, and then didn't do anything else. I made a video on Warren's policies back when she was a thing that we all thought about, and at the time I thought she was legitimately a progressive. I didn't support her, but I wanted to believe she meant what she said. Of course, I was wrong. After she dropped out, instead of endorsing the only progressive left in the race, instead of doing anything that could even be misconstrued as productive, she went on SNL and did a little dance.
Look, I just flipped the switch. Flip. I don't know nobody else is doing this.
Then she went on the news to talk at length about how Bernie supporters were so mean to her online.
We are responsible for the people who claim to be our supporters and do really threatening, ugly, dangerous things for other
and it's
candidates.
a particular problem with Sanders' supporters.
It is. I mean, and it just is. It's just a factual question.
And guys, wow, look at the time. It's March. Time for our good friend Coronas to enter the conversation. By the time the March 17th contest rolled around, Bernie was literally urging his supporters to stay home, even if that meant not voting for him. He was okay with losing those states rather than causing undue harm by spreading the disease, which was a good thing to do. Joe Biden did not do this, and urged his voters, mostly older people by the way, to go to the polls. The primaries that weekend were Biden landslides, and completely coincidentally, led to thousands of new coronavirus cases. Even after it came down to a two-man race, I still thought my biological father, Bernie Sanders, look it up, I was on Maury, might have had a chance. The majority of voters in the primaries wanted Medicare for all. They wanted a Green New Deal. Yet even though Biden was an outspoken opponent of these things, they still voted for him because of this false concept of electability. For some reason, propaganda, Democratic voters think America really likes buttoned-up centrist dudes, even if they're literally going through rigor mortis on the debate stage. And as I said earlier, Bernie's campaign did literally nothing to fight back against this idea. In multiple debates, Bernie talked about how he was great friends with Biden, and how he would make a nice nominee. My name is Bernie Sanders, I could suck my own cock, and Joe Biden would be a great president. Not parody, that one isn't a parody, that's a real quote. Meanwhile, Biden repeated the message that Bernie was too radical, that America just wouldn't vote for him. And America didn't. Bernie performed terribly in March, and he saw the writing on the wall. On April 8th, just over 2 months after Iowa, he suspended his campaign.
So it's with great honor and humility, I accept this nomination for President of the United States of America.
A couple months later, Joe Biden became the Democratic nominee. And just to rub it in, despite winning the most votes in 10 states, since every candidate except for Bernie gave all their delegates to Biden, on the convention floor, Bernie was announced as the winner of only 3 states: Utah, North Dakota, and Vermont. And that was it. That was the end of the Democratic primaries. Honestly, while doing research for this video, I realized how quickly I forgot the primaries had ever existed. I forgot about February as a concept because it's just been marked for the last 7 months. That's why I wanted to make this video. Even if there's much worse stuff happening now, we shouldn't forget the bullshit that happened back in February. If you asked me at the start of this year, I wouldn't have guessed that Biden would lose so badly, only to come back and win it all. But there is one man who did. That's right, everybody. I'm talking about Ronald Berger, professional YouTube astrologer. I'ma level with you. I couldn't find a place to put this in the video, but I need to talk about Ronald Berger because he's fucking incredible. In January, he published an analysis of Joe Biden's horoscope, predicting his future in the 2020 primary and beyond. Let's see what he had to say.
Saturn, the planet of restrictions, directly aspects his natal planet of opportunity, so this will likely result in some setbacks early in 2020, in other words, during the first of the state primaries. But then Saturn moves on and will be less of a problem. Also, note that Jupiter moves into Capricorn at the end of March. From this position, transiting Jupiter will give a boost to his natal Jupiter, allowing Mr. Biden to recover from the previous Saturn opposition. To sum it up, Mr. Biden is in an excellent situation regarding his planetary period and the sequence of his subperiods, and with the Jupiter transit later this year, he gets a boost. But the Saturn transit and K2 are going to create issues for him and likely some setbacks in the early primary states.
So, Ronald Berger predicted that Biden would lose the first few primaries, have a big comeback, and lead heavily in polls against Trump. Guys, I think I believe in astrology now. One of the issues that I have with making videos like this is that I can't find a way to make it funny. Making videos about politics is fine, but I like making jokes a lot more, and it's hard to do that about the world right now. Even though Bernie stopped campaigning in April, even though he's currently campaigning for Biden against Trump, Democrats are preemptively blaming him for Biden's potential loss. Even when the left cowardly concedes, we're still condescended to and blamed for the establishment's failures. If any actual Democrats somehow make it to this part of the video, I could totally see them going shouldn't we focus on beating Drumpf-Cheeto in the White House? If Biden loses, it's Bernie's fault. His supporters didn't fall in line. But all falling in line behind Biden does is silently admit that all the fuckery the Democrats did is fine. The DNC knows they can just fuck over Bernie all they want because in the end, leftists have nowhere else to go. I'm going to make a separate video about why I'm probably voting green in this election, but I feel like this video can give you a good idea why. The Democratic Party isn't a vehicle for change. I don't trust the Democrats to pull us left when they treat the most lukewarm of leftists the way they did in 2020. And I especially don't trust them to change when we never actually hold them accountable for their actions and still vote for them every time they fuck us over. Earlier in the video, I said that it didn't really matter how well Bernie's campaign was organized because the Democratic Party doesn't have to be democratic. The people who wrote the rules were openly biased against him, and even though there was a little uncertainty in February, it led to the only possible conclusion: a landslide loss for the left. And the thing is, Bernie isn't even that radical. If the Democrats, the leftist party, treated a democratic socialist with this much animosity, there's no fucking way any leftist movement could succeed within America's current electoral framework. That's what these primaries led me to conclude. If we want to get shit done, voting isn't the way to do it. Kelly, give us a meow. Please? 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 I love you so much.